Welcome back to another episode of Dentistry's Growing with Grace podcast. Join Grace and her guest of the week as they discuss lessons learned in the industry and explore unique insights into ethical growth.
Hello and welcome back to Dentistry's Growing with Grace. I'm very excited to have Bob Affleck from Citi with me today. Bob, welcome to the show.
Oh, Grace, it's so great to be here. Thank you so much. I've just been so excited for this today, and just to be a part of this and hearing all the amazing things that you do for dentists is just beyond. And so I'm just really honored and grateful that I'm here today.
Thank you so much. And I know that the information that you share today is going to help our audience, and I want them to listen carefully. And for those of you who might be driving and listening to the podcast, you can always come back to it. My website is gracerizza.com, and you can find all of our past and present podcasts in the library of content there. So, Bob, tell me about what you do in the dental space and how you fit into this wonderful world of dentistry.
Well, I will have to say that I've actually been in the dental space for over 31 years. So without a doubt, I've experienced a lot throughout my career. I really started out really in practice finance, so I consider myself to be a practice finance specialist. I currently work with Citibank Healthcare Practice Finance. I'm a National Business Development Officer, and so I basically am in charge of actually helping our business development officers to build their territories. Then on top of that, and throughout my history of the healthcare world and dental world, primarily just dental, but I also had become a practice management consultant throughout the years. I worked with a large practice management consulting firm, a nationwide consulting firm, and I have to tell you that I was so blessed to really be able to work with them, because I learned so much about how to help dentists really within their practice and understanding how to build a successful practice for themselves. And then I jumped out of that and kind of went back into practice finance, but I then started working obviously with more of the acquisitions and helping young dentists get into their practice. And, primarily for me, when it comes to practice, helping doctors with their practice and helping them to acquire a practice, one thing I learned from the very beginning is they really didn't understand what was most important about what they were buying when they purchased their practice. And, through that, I learned that they were very excited about purchasing a practice, but they really didn't understand it. So I really wanted to educate them through that process as well. So that is one area and why I really appreciated the practice management consulting experience as well. But then I actually jumped out of that, and I jumped into practice brokering. I actually, really started to see what was going on in the practice brokering world. And, basically, there's some great practice brokers out there for sure. But I saw that, a lot of them really didn't have the best interest of the doctor that was buying that practice. It was almost like they just cared about, just selling that practice and moving on to the next. So I jumped in and wanted to become a practice broker. I jumped into that. Basically, when I got into that, I started to find that dentists weren't trusting me either. So I primarily, when I got into that, I thought, I really would rather have them trust me. So I jumped back out of that world and then jumped into what it is I'm really passionate about. And really, truly what I'm passionate about is being an advisor and an educator for dentists and creating solutions at every stage of their career. I really love being a buyer's advocate. So when doctors are purchasing their practices, they really don't know who really is on their side. And I really like helping young buyers at every step of their way through that acquisition. And I also love to help doctors transition in and out of their practices as well. So a lot of times I end up working with both the buyers and the sellers if it's a private practice. So I love that process. So long and short of it, that's a long way around it. And I know it's just because I've been in it for 31 years, right? But Um,
Well, it's awesome. I mean, to have the experience where you had some hands-on experience in the
yeah,
practices through the role of, when you were a consultant,
right.
that brings a different level of understanding to these transactions
Yeah,
because and even in my role, I'm not as involved with the transition, but I hear all the horror stories. I
yeah,
hear all of the, well, I didn't buy what I thought I was buying, or
right.
I didn't expect this or that. You'd much rather invest in getting the right advisors and team on board at the beginning than
Yeah,
trying to than failing your way through it, because
that's right.
it's such an investment. It really is. So, during the shutdown,
Yeah.
that was a result of COVID, um, what advice were you giving, and how were you able to help people through that? And what was your main takeaway through that period of time?
So, I really appreciate you asking that question. Primarily, I served as an advisor with an amazing group of industry leaders on a weekly webinar. My role on the advisory panel was actually to educate and help dentists through the PPP, EIDL loans, and really kind of through that whole minefield of what was going on in that whole process. And I have to really admit, one thing I was really proud of is, and I'll just give Citi a really big shout out here because they did an amazing job, with helping doctors through that PPP process. And I think we really helped hundreds of, well, I almost want to say thousands of people, but it was a lot of people out there in this world. So along with that, I love providing them with the advice of helping them come back stronger in their practices as well. So that's primarily the one thing that I did throughout that process, and we did it all the way through up until the doctors started to open up their practice again. And I think the biggest piece of advice, which I actually gave to the dentist every single week, there's actually a quote that I was always used every single time because I really wanted them to focus on the positive because I know that that was such a horrible negative time for so many people. And basically what I said to them, it was a quote that was given by a gentleman that I listen to probably on a daily basis on a podcast. His name is Andy Stanley. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of him, but an amazing guy. He basically said the things that we get distracted by are never as important as the thing we get distracted from. And so I really wanted them to, you know, uh, really think about that because, wouldn't you agree, Grace, that, when you go through a crisis, you start to focus on, all the crap that's going on around you. So,
Well, and I think distraction is what pulls most of us, especially, business owners, from our main goals, and it's so dangerous to us. And it's not little distractions either. Sometimes it's our minds. Sometimes it's our new ideas. We're very
right,
creative people, and sometimes that pulls us from our focus. And focus is very powerful.
absolutely.
It's been
Absolutely.
top of mind for me, actually. Last week I submitted an article all about focus and how underrated it can be, and
Yes.
it's I couldn't agree more. So how can our listeners and members and our clients, how can they increase cash flow in their practice, especially right now?
Right. So, the one thing that I knew, helping these doctors through this process, I knew that when they came back to their practice, that the very first thing they needed to focus on was not just all the PPE and all of, trying to get their teams back to the practice and all this other stuff, but I thought, what, the best thing they could do for themselves is to really free up their cash flow. And so I actually recommended him, started to recommend to them, almost 2 or 3 weeks before they opened up their practices, um, to basically look at refinancing and consolidating their debt. And basically by doing that, it would help them to really start to free up more cash flow for themselves for future things. So in my experience of working with dentists, obviously it seems like dentists in general have multiple loans on their practice. And you probably hear it all the time when you're trying to help them with their marketing and they come back and say, I just can't afford it. And that just seems to be the theme, because, and it's a lot of times true that they may not be able to afford it, but normally they do have practice loans, they have equipment loans, they have lines of credit, they have, and sometimes they have commercial loans as well. So, so basically, what I tried to do is really educate them on freeing up their cash flow. I wanted to give you like an example of really what that looks like for someone, because I don't think anyone realizes how powerful it is.
Oh yeah, someone somewhere right now is going, oh, okay, yeah, tell me the next thing. Like, I could do that. It sounds like a lot of work. What could it really save me?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's just an example of what it can save. So, so primarily, I'm going to use an example of a doctor that possibly had purchased a practice 2 or 3 years ago, maybe has a practice loan of about $500,000 right now, a current balance of $500,000. So their monthly payment would probably be around $7,954. They also would have equipment loans, and many dentists do. And normally they're around $80,000 is what I kind of seen on an average. And their monthly payments on that would be about $1,500. They're definitely going to have lines of credit that are probably maxed out at around $50,000. And so that's another $1,500. So if you add up all their payments, their monthly payments add up to be about $10,963 a month. So based on that, if we were to consolidate and refinance their debt, now what you're looking at is a new loan amount of $630,000 because they consolidated all that together. And their new monthly payment has dropped to $6,303. So if you look at that, now they've got, now they've actually taken that $10,963. They've actually now got a new savings of $4,659 a month, which it adds up to be about $55,000 a year in savings. And that's by refinancing their practice debt.
So do they end up paying more in the long term to do that?
You know what, they do, but if you really look at it, when they're coming back from something like they've gone through, the bottom line to that story is that now is not the time to think about the long term. Yes, they could be stretching out their term a little bit longer, but you know what? Now is the time to really focus on growing their practice and first of all, getting it back on track and then growing their practice, right? So, so basically, what I tell doctors is that, focus on the fact that you're needing to free up some cash flow so you can actually afford to do that. And then once you start to grow your practice, then start paying off your loan quicker. So
I like this for selfish reasons, and I like it for unselfish reasons. But really, it was really painful to see people panic and pull back on really important things that were serving them. Right. And I saw so many people, and it was such a hard time because we didn't know the pros and cons of our decisions. We were making decisions without knowing for sure what the long-term, and we still don't really know the long-term, right, ramifications of these decisions. So for instance, a lot of people went in and like day one laid off the team or furloughed the team or whatever. That has in some cases served well, and in some cases hasn't served well. And so many people were just looking for guidance that we were kind of just taking whatever guidance we could get, because when you're panicked or fearful, it's really hard to make good decisions when you're functioning like that. And so a lot of people looked to other people to make decisions for them. Yes. And now what we're seeing, and to kind of, because I know there might be a little lag of when this goes live, but what we're seeing now, early August, is that people are having a hard time getting their teams. Staffing is the biggest issue right now. Getting the teams in place seems to be the biggest issue right now. There's a lot of things that play into why that is, and I don't want to get political, so
We're not going
I
to
won't go there.
I would
I
love
won't
to.
go there. But I'm tempted to, but I won't. Yeah, but I mean, the people who immediately, without conversations, panicked and laid off their whole team or fired them without really great communication are now, dealing with how do we get through reopening. And there were a lot of decisions that were made. I was very, very blessed to have loyal clients. Vast majority wanted to support us because they wanted us to stay in business so we could be there for them post. So I have the best clients in the world, and I'm forever grateful for how they treated me through this situation.
That is awesome.
I've seen a lot of people go and just cancel everything.
Yes.
And now they feel bad to backtrack, and so they're looking for all these new resources.
Right.
And they could have financially come up with a plan like reconsolidating, stretching out the long term, freeing up a little bit of cash flow to
Right.
make ends meet,
Right.
and then reopening and having everything intact still, and making it up on the back end, which I think a lot of people did, and I think a lot of people are going into that a little bit differently. So my next question: what steps would you recommend that our listeners take to strengthen the foundation of their practice?
Well, you know what? I honestly, I think the one thing they really need to start focusing on is really with the foundation of their practice more than anything. I was really, promoting marketing from day one. That was the first thing that I kept telling them is like, you know what, you need to get the message out there about marketing, about how you're coming back to this practice and how you're going to keep your patients safe and your team safe, right? And what's that message and how are you going to deliver that to everyone in the community as well? So I actually think the number one thing that they should do is always come to their marketing, look at their websites, freshen it up, really get on a social media platform, and really start to deliver the message of what their practice is all about.
And I did not pay you to say that. I just want to go on the record and say that message was not sponsored by Identity Dental Marketing, but I appreciate it.
Well, it's true. My next thing I would recommend is that everyone, because we all need to do a checkup from the neck up on everything, right? So basically, I also say that for the practice as well. I would recommend that they do what we call a practice snapshot or a business evaluation. Let's go in and look at what's going on within the systems of their practice. Let's look for areas of opportunity for growth and how we can actually get in there and fine tune all of those systems and get things back on track to where they need to be. Let's deliver a message of health for the patients, when they walk in that door. And primarily, I would highly recommend, to look at the different profit centers that they probably don't have within the practice. Some, for example, that I would recommend is bringing in an insurance negotiator. A lot of dentists don't even know about these, and a lot of dentists feel that that the insurance companies are dictating to how they get paid, right? What they don't realize is that they shouldn't be dictated to. They should be telling the insurance companies how much they should be getting paid. And so I would hire what I call an insurance negotiator to come in and help them to negotiate higher fees. Mm-hmm. Another one, a big one, is practice membership programs. So membership programs for the patients. A lot of patients throughout this time have lost their insurance, right? So basically, this is offering them a way to be able to pay for your services. And if you have that on your website, saying, you know what, we don't have, if you don't have insurance, that's okay. We have a membership plan for you, right?
No insurance, no problem.
There you go.
So we see these things and we see these changes. I see on a regular basis that that our clients will implement a membership program or something, but they won't invest in getting that message out to the community because they fear that the new patients, you know, that their existing patients are going to be, you know, it's going to cost them more than it's going to make them. But really,
Right.
if they don't market it, then that is what's going to happen. They have to actually commit to not only the changes that they make, but the communication to get that message out.
The other thing I would recommend on that is
Yeah.
actually getting more educated on it because of the fact that there are many doctors, and it is becoming a trend within the industry to become insurance, free, basically independent of dental insurance.
And one of the things I want to talk to you about that is a big part of this is dependent on how you market and how you communicate.
Correct.
And Bob, you've been in dentistry since I was a toddler, or since I was in preschool.
Wow.
And so you've seen more than I've seen, and I've been in dentistry for about 12 years.
Right.
And you've seen this mentality change. So talk to our listeners about how, let's say, the old school mentality about marketing, and I'm going off track, sorry, but the old school mentality about marketing, and how dangerous is that when it comes to growing a practice?
You know what? I would actually say, I think this is going to really sum it up for you really well. So I would actually say old school mentality of marketing really is all about cookie cutter type marketing, right? So I think there's a lot of marketing companies out there that really make you look like everyone else out there. So I think it's all about now in today's world is about becoming unique and different and showing them your whole personality of who you are and what you're about. And so I think that it's really important that they get a new message out there of, basically that they're bringing themselves up into the millennial age of, marketing as well. Because really that's actually where everybody is searching is on internet, right?
Yeah.
And I can tell you that the doctors that I've seen that are the older generation of doctors, you go to their websites and they're just old and tired. And it doesn't really speak to anything except I just look like everyone else. So, the one thing, and I really have to tell you that, the doctors that I work with, I also help fourth quarter dentists, doctors that are looking to retire. And, the one thing I really tell them is, you know what, now's the time to freshen up your marketing efforts, possibly rebrand yourself. If the name of your practice is your name, why don't we call it something new? And that way it just makes it a little bit better, but you're also rebranding yourself and bringing other new patients into that practice.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the one thing I would recommend. So what do you think?
I agree completely. And I think there's an even older school of thought. So I've watched it evolve from marketing is bad, and at a point it was illegal. And so there's still this feeling of we're doing something wrong if we market.
Right.
So, and there's also this feeling that, well, if we just do what we're supposed to do and we treat people well, we don't need to market. And it can be true. It can be true to a point, but marketing is so much more than just putting out an ad. It is how you communicate and educate your community. And now we have all of these resources, videos at the tip of our fingers on our phones. We can just go live and communicate with the community. Like, it's so simple right now to get exposure and to educate. And yet there's still such a strong resistance from what I see.
Well, there's one thing I do want to add to that as well, is that the one thing I really learned throughout the years is doctors will look at marketing and they'll say, oh, it doesn't work. It's just expensive. It doesn't work, right? And it's like, I just want to sit back and say, seriously, really? But probably the marketing is working, but what's not working is maybe the person answering the phone. And they sometimes don't want to believe that. They want to believe that it's the marketing that's not working. And so absolutely, when they put together any type of marketing, program, and I'm sure you do this with your clients, but to have a protocol of how they answer the phone.
Oh, absolutely. It's very challenging when they're not willing to even listen to a call because they
Right.
don't even want to know. Just they'd rather put double the amount of money into marketing than have an uncomfortable conversation with
Yeah.
whoever is in that role.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yep.
and sometimes I will say sometimes the marketing is not working. Sometimes, there's not transparency on the message being put out or the ad spend.
Yep.
I just want to kind of throw this out there, and it's a little off topic, but if you are investing in marketing and you don't know your exact budgets, how much is going to Google, how much is going to Facebook, you just are paying one lump sum and you're not
Right.
seeing any difference in call volume. It could be a situation where the marketing isn't working and you just want to facilitate some open communication, look at your analytics, ask your marketing team to explain the data to you
Right.
in a way that you understand what you're paying for, and it'll help set your mind at ease. You don't want to be paying for something you don't understand and then not even really understanding the return, because then you're kind of driving blind. It's
Right.
really hard to make those decisions.
Yep.
So we are talking about foundation and what we need to do to add to strengthen the foundation. Let's recap what elements, just for our audience to recap, what elements make up the foundation of a practice?
So I would say if we were to look at the foundation, the first thing I would help a doctor with personally is let's look at your financial foundation first, right? Let's look at how we can actually start to free up some cash flow and look for opportunities of growth with, that you can actually use that extra money for. Without a doubt, I would always say a business evaluation, a snapshot. I would also, do an evaluation of their marketing efforts as well. Do a complete demographic of what's happening in their community and what's going on there. And then also bring in all these additional profit centers into the practice. One area, and I didn't even mention it, was perio in a practice. I know this, now I'm going down the clinical side, but periotherapy in a practice is super important. And I'm not sure if you've heard of a company called, I'm giving all these little,
That's okay.
it's called Perio Protect. Amazing, company, but what they do is they're, providing a way to help patients become healthy within their practice, and through the therapy of Perio Protect. And I just think that has really grown a perio part of the practice for a lot of dental practices. So that's a great profit center. Anyway.
Yeah, and I think it starts with knowing the numbers. It starts with looking at the financials, looking for these areas of opportunity. When you work with someone, Bob, you have all of this experience and knowledge as to where these benchmarks are. And
Yes.
and so you can very quickly and easily see the areas of opportunity and then work to connect these doctors with the resources that they need to make a
Yeah,
change.
that's
And
right.
I absolutely love it. So you work to help many dentists transition in and out of their practices. How's the market right now? Let's talk about that. And what's your recommendation on marketing?
So, basically, the market right now for acquisitions, without a doubt, you've got a tremendous amount of doctors wanting to sell their practices. We're just, I'm talking to brokers all the time, and when they're telling me they're just overloaded with practices, and the reasons behind that is primarily because these are older doctors. They're afraid of coming back to the practice. For various reasons, and or they just don't want to have to put up with all the things that they have to do to come back to the practice. So they're selling their practices much sooner than what they had expected. And so now you've got buyers that are also really taking advantage of not the doctors that are selling, but they're taking advantage of being able to buy a practice now. And
Yeah.
so without a doubt, we're seeing lots of acquisitions and a lot of doctors coming in. I think the biggest things that banks are looking at is, how well have these sellers been able to bring back the practice, once they came back to the practice, how well is the practice performing once they came back. That's one area that I think that everybody's looking at. But the great news is about that is I'm actually seeing a lot of doctors almost at 100% right now, based on where they were before. And in some cases, I've heard some doctors are saying, you know what, I'm doing more than I am.
Oh, best month ever in July. I'm hearing that left and right. And
Exactly.
I'm like, listen, calm down, look at October.
Yeah.
And stay grounded, stay focused,
Right.
get someone scheduling October, November, please.
Yes.
So they're so busy right now. And there's this sense of relief because we had this fear of, are we ever going to come back from this? And then we felt so confident in the comeback because we had all this backlog work. But it's really not a true reflection of where the practice is at. And we need to be focused.
So we need to be focused. Remember, we get distracted from the things that are that we're in right now, from the things that are important. So they come back, they start to get distracted for being too busy, and they lose sight of building their practice, right? So that's actually what where they're at. But for buyers coming in, now circling back, sorry.
That's all right.
I'm all over the place. So for buyers, when it comes to purchasing their practice, I highly recommend that they come to somebody such as yourself. Once they get their loan formally approved by the bank, it's pretty much the sure thing, moving forward, that this is going to happen, right? So great time to actually, start to set up their branding, their marketing, their marketing efforts, and how they're going to do things moving forward.
Yeah. So I had a conversation earlier, Bob, with someone who is purchasing a practice in 1 month and needs branding and website, doesn't know how much marketing he's going to need after that, because sometimes you don't know 100% until you get in and you see the actual new patient flow and the actual situation. But he said, I should probably just wait until I get the money and I close. And I was like, oh my goodness, the second you close and you're the owner, you're going to be having to fire people and audit this and audit that. And you get so overwhelmed. You want to be at the point where you're ready to hit go on the website. That's going to be the last thing you're thinking about at that time. Yep. And I was like, ideally you would have called me a few weeks ago, but we still have some time. Yep. And so it can be very hectic to take over a business that's new to you and to learn it all. And there's a lot involved in that. I have a question off of the agenda, out of the blue, and
let's hear it.
I can edit it out if you don't find it appropriate.
Oh,
but
wow.
I've heard from first-time buyers that they're having a hard time getting financed right now because of the uncertainty of the market, and that it's much easier for people who have already owned a practice or two to leverage and to get financed. So can you talk to me about that? Because someone told me that like maybe a week ago, and I was like,
So, okay, I'm going to tell you everything, all the little ins and outs of what's been going on. So really quick. So primarily, coming out of this for banks, obviously, I think everybody was kind of running scared and trying to figure out, okay, do we trust this? And are we going to be able to move forward? How are we going to move forward, to lend again and all these other things? And, right off the bat, when everybody started opening, there was maybe one or two lenders out there that, already looked at this and said, you know what, we're fine. We know these doctors are going to be okay. So they just automatically started lending, right? And, and just really kind of put their protocol in place before the doctors opened up their practice. I think some lenders held off and decided, you know what, let's see how the doctors do coming back to the practice and how well the practices perform. So, so now you have lenders out there that want you to believe that there is no lending out there right now. But the reality of it is there is lending out there right now. For sure, Citibank is actually out there lending, and we are helping doctors with their acquisitions. But I know of some of my competitors that are just barely coming back on board, and some of them still haven't. But the reality of it is, if they want to call me, I'll tell them who is open and who's not.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, that's very helpful because sometimes you get information and you kind of project it out to the industry. Well, maybe that was one lender at that time.
I would, if it's just a one lender saying that, I would say, okay, let me call the others to find out, because that is absolutely not true.
Well, and in the same time period, I had several like first time buyers close on their practices. So I'm like,
Yes,
the information isn't quite
that's
adding
right.
up. Yeah.
There's some big lenders out there that really wanted you to believe that that lending wasn't happening right now, and they were honestly the popular ones out there that are like up in your area, and where your guys are at. But the reality of it is, yes, there are nationwide lenders that are lending today. So.
And I just want to say, from a business owner's perspective, or for someone who's thinking about becoming an owner, I think it's a great time. I think you can get a great opportunity right now.
Yep.
And where would someone start if they're like, you know what, I think I do want to take the first steps to learn about becoming an owner and acquiring a practice?
Good question. This is actually where I love this part of it. I think I would probably, and I probably shouldn't say this out loud, but just rather help doctors that are new coming into the dental world, and wanting to become a part of owning their own practice. It's really all about really helping them to, first of all, understand what their goals and their vision is, what it is that they're really looking for, and really helping them to eliminate the fears that they have when it comes to purchasing a practice, and then possibly helping them to locate a practice with them, and then basically from that start to look at the practices with them and helping them to gain the confidence that they need to be able to understand what's going on in the practice.
So would they contact you, Bob, and you can help guide them?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Okay, great. And as we wrap up, how can our listeners and how can our audience get in touch with you?
So absolutely, they can email me, bob.affleck@citi.com. They can absolutely call me. And I always prefer texting first because I do get a lot of calls. So, but my phone number is 949-939-4550. Just text me ahead of time. I'll let you know if I'm able to talk. If not, I'll let you know when I can, and then we can set something up. But I'd love to be able to help your listeners.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. And for our listeners that are here, you can find us on our Facebook group. It's going to be changing from Dental Marketing with Grace to Dentistry's Growing with Grace. Please subscribe to the podcast so you can hear all of our great information, and we will see you soon.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.